I'm not just saying that. Thank you for all that, because I definitely learned some stuff, and I think there might even be some connections. And also the previous image, did you design something in that? Didn't you? Not in that in front of that library?
No, he had all my BET awards.
Oh, there it is. Okay, yeah. Sorry, I thought you were looking at it. All right. Okay, from witness to participant to content creator. Yeah, that's I think been my journey when I think about hip hop and how I grew up, and then what I witnessed, and then how I participated. You know, going to parties, basement parties. Roller skating rinks in the late 70s, hip-hop parties, tried to break dance, didn't get very far with that. All the while doing other things that I'll get into now. Okay, Louise Davis and from Hampton, Virginia, and Charles Sumner Stone from Hartford, Connecticut. They met in New York City, I think in the late 40s. And had that maniac over there, that's me, the ridiculous Don King hair. Those are my two older sisters, Allegra and Krishna. Okay, so immediately I got into getting jacked up on all the wonderful sugary cereals. These are all, I think, staples of the hip-hop community. Early on, a lot of cats do talk about it. Snoop Dogg, everyone talks about this stuff. Now laters, Blow Pops for sure. And then also just really start to absorb, you know, the media that was on television, and these are some of the things that I really fell in love with. Ultraman, which was a Japanese, I guess in the kaiju genre of large hero fighting giant monsters and stuff. He was my first superhero. The trickster god, Bugs Bunny, aka Rare Rabbit. So I thought that was really amazing when you brought that up. I had to giggle to myself because he really has had an influence, and he's been in a couple of my films in the background, kind of doing his own little thing. And so on. So just a myriad of lots of animation, tons that aren't up here that were influences. Then I moved into the movie world in terms of enjoying a lot of the stop motion animation, which is essentially before CGI, right? Clay figures or maquettes and stuff that animated. The animator, Ray Harryhausen, did all these Sinbad movies and Jason and the Argonauts. Obviously Star Wars, well not obviously, but Star Wars for me was the movie that just blew my lid open. Like that, at that point I knew I wanted to be in the film world. At the time I was like, I want to be a special effects executive supervisor. Just because of what it said, because I used to read the special effects magazines, and it was like, that's what I want to do, and I want to work for Industrial Light and Magic and all that. But in the meantime, high school comes around, really get absorbed into arcade games and all that. Robotron was my game. For sure. There you go. And then comics. Now the thing about comics for me is that I read the images. Rarely did I read the text. And that would be the sort of a double-edged sword, both bad and good. So then and then as I got older, like in college, I started to read more. But I went from comic books to abstract expressionism. So going from Neil Adams to Willem de Kooning, Romare Bearden and his collages and his prints, as well as Franz Klein, Mark Rothko. These things I was absorbing as a child. My father had artwork all over the house, and she would drag me to the museum. I always had a hard time with the Renaissance and Baroque period stuff, but on the other side of the Philadelphia Art Museum was the contemporary art stuff. So it was all this, which I was really moved by. Umberto Giacometti, his portraits, incredible. Barclay Hendricks, his portraits, incredible. Again, more Romare Bearden. I felt like Romare Bearden was one of the first artists for me where me as an artist, it really etched in a spiritual character of who we are, and of all that I've absorbed at that point as a child: gospel music, jazz. My father was a big swing jazz person, my mother was bebop, free jazz, and so on. And then just the abstract stuff we had, including African figurines and things like that. So he really embodied that for me. And then Grace Jones, interestingly enough, because he had mentioned it as well, Grace Jones for me was also one of the first I guess, icons of color in a modern world that was totally science fiction and futuristic and all the other adjectives I'm not coming up with. And what's fascinating is that the person that she worked with, Jean-Paul Goude, who was a designer from France, really talented, but also had a real hardcore fetish issue with black women, the black figure, which is super dark, no puns intended, and you know, that I don't want to get into, but again, I took the various things that he did do that really I felt like was moving. I then started getting into international animation shorts from Poland, and this one is Yellow Submarine, and this one's actually Vincent. It's an American one, but then there's the Brothers Quay over there. So all that to say is that just lots of texture, not just Bugs Bunny, or not just Japanese animation, or not even just Walt Disney, but more different points of view, different styles. And that has started to inform the animation I would do in my music videos. These are stills from Fushnikin's True Fushnik. And the technique is called xerography, where literally I would photograph them performing, and then I would print every frame on Xerox, and then I would cut them out, and then I would animate them as they would rhyme. So that's when I started to sort of, I guess, bend the traditions or the canons that music videos had established, which we'll get to sort of a Brer Rabbit kind of, or a glitch, I guess, as you could say. I love the terms that you were using. Same thing here with Black Sheep, the choice is yours, where the image implodes and, you know, reveals the protagonist, you know, yanking the image, destroying the image. You know, do you want this or do that? Do you want that? So, again, the xerography was being used here. Graffiti was a big influence for me. I just enjoyed it in general. Growing up in Philadelphia, there are definitely graffiti artists all over Philly. So, and that inspired some animation that I did using graffiti artists, a couple of very famous graffiti artists. In fact, this one was designed by this man right here. This was his buddy Wes over there, and this is Brew. This is a video for Artifacts, the wrong side of the track. Another icon for me, like Grace Jones, Mars Blackman to me was like one of the first characters I saw where I was essentially seeing myself on the screen. I was seeing a whimsical, absurdist character, and I say absurdist in a great way, absurdity and fun, that I thought, like that first shot of him riding his bicycle towards the camera and screaming and stuff. I was in college at the time, in art school, and it was an incredible moment. So he, in many ways, this character also, I guess, concretized or just said, yes, you should go out and put your craziness out into the world. Bonita Applebum, I did that, 911 as a joke. Also having fun with type, which I always like to do in the language. Y'all, something I remember we used to say in Philly, coupled with John and a couple other joints. I left my wallet in El Segundo, you know, this sort of sequential storytelling, you know, applying images to every line of lyric, which is how I reacted to it. I put this up here because this is from Sid and Nancy, the movie, and there's this incredible shot where Sid and Nancy are making out, and it's in slow motion, and trash is just falling from the sky. And that's always stuck with me, so I wanted to replicate that respectfully in Bonita Applebum, where instead of kissing, they're slow dragging. That's the term. I was born in '66, so I went to basement parties in the '70s, and it was all about slow dragging. So they're slow dragging, and records are just falling, you know, above them, behind them. And I repeated this in the video where you see this couple slow dragging in different, you know, areas of town, because, you know, love exists everywhere. That was sort of the subliminal visual I wanted to put there. Okay, Roy DeCarava, African-American cinematographer, he should have been, but still photographer, loved his sense of composition. I remember his parents showing me his work and just being moved by that. And I eventually would apply it as well to some of the composition making I would do in my music videos, as well as in drumline. I guess you could say that's hip-hop adjacent. Here we go. And back when I was doing that, part of the aesthetic for that movie, besides the thing of me saying, look, I want to make a large, muscular sports movie. Like that was the intent of the movie. Like literally, because the training and stuff that they do, it's as rigorous as any other sport in its own right. But the other thing was geometry. That there's a visual geometry to marching. But then and throughout the movie, if you look, I'm finding geometry everywhere in the library and in the way I do shots and stuff that I wanted to go through with that. And one last thing about drumline is the music. Oh, yes, did I say that? Okay, time's up, so let me then move on. All right, real quick. Maureen Di Carava, seeing the moodiness and distortion into static. Here's Brer Rabbit again, or Bugs Bunny. He's one of the first characters to break the fourth wall for me and actually wink at us as the audience. Yep. And I did that in What They Do video, where I'm making fun of all the different music video tropes. You know, winking at that. His Lionel Martin look. Keep me real. Same thing here. Here's a traditional formation of a band. There's that whimsy, then more surreal, metaphorical stuff here of the roots of walking through their neighborhood where everyone is dead. It's a longer story as to what's behind this, which I don't have time to tell, but nonetheless, just these are things that inform me. Lastly, myself, growing up doing roller skating and stuff like that, and then the great work of the great Jamel Shabazz inspired my visuals for Paid in Full. Talk about keeping it real in terms of him as a documentarian. And then last but not least is the dialogue, the quiet language we have, the things we can say without saying, even though they're just saying what's up. The true profundity for me of this is these men holding hands through the phone. That's all it is. It's not even really asking what they're talking about, it's about holding hands through the phone. And lastly is, I'm sorry, I said lastly a couple times, it's the last thing for sure. The Underdogs, again, hip-hop adjacent, but I was honored to be able to explore the Long Beach world of football, which is very much connected to hip-hop. Okay.